10 expenses you should kill before 40. You're looking at your bank statement at the end of the month, and the money that came in should theoretically have left you with something substantial to save or invest. But somehow it's all just gone. You scroll through the charges and there's nothing that feels wasteful exactly. Just lots of small things that seemed reasonable in the moment. A subscription here, a convenience purchase there, the premium version of something you could probably live without, recurring charges you barely notice anymore. And you think to yourself, I'm making decent money now. I should feel more financially secure than this. But instead, you're still living pretty much paycheck to paycheck, just with nicer stuff and a longer list of monthly obligations that didn't exist 5 years ago. My name is Jack, and I spend way too much time analyzing spending patterns, budget leaks, and specifically the recurring expenses that quietly drain wealth from people who should be building it rapidly during their peak earning years. And what I've noticed is that there's a predictable set of expenses that made sense in your 20s, or at least were forgivable, but become genuinely destructive to your wealth building if you carry them into your late 30s and 40s. Because here's what changes as you approach 40. You're running out of time for compound interest to work its magic, your income is probably close to peaking, and your opportunity to build substantial wealth is narrowing. Every recurring expense that's not adding real value is literally stealing your financial future. Not in a dramatic way, but in that slow, steady way that means you wake up at 55 realizing you should have a lot more saved than you do. So if you're in your 30s and you want to actually build wealth instead of just treading water with a nicer lifestyle, or if you're wondering why you're not further ahead financially despite making good money, this is for you. Because eliminating these specific expenses before you hit 40 might be the difference between retiring comfortably and working until you're 70. The car payment that never ends. Let's start with the biggest one. The expense that's probably doing more damage to your wealth building than anything else. That permanent car payment you've accepted as normal. You're paying $500, $600, maybe $700 a month for a vehicle that you'll drive for 3 or 4 years before trading it in for another one with another payment. You've basically created a subscription service for car ownership, and it's costing you somewhere between $6,000 and $8,400 every single year. Here's the thing. A car payment made sense when you were 25 and had no savings and needed reliable transportation. But you're 37 now. You should own your vehicle outright. Not because you can't afford the payment, obviously you can, you're making it every month, but because that monthly payment invested instead of spent is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars by retirement. Let me do the math for you. $600 a month invested at 8% annual returns for 20 years is $354,000. $354,000 that you're essentially setting on fire to drive a nicer car than you need. I had a wake-up moment about this at 34 when I calculated that I'd been making car payments continuously since I was 23. 11 years of nonstop payments. I'd literally spent over $60,000 on car payments alone, not counting insurance and gas and maintenance. And I had nothing to show for it because I kept trading up every few years. So I bought a reliable used car cash, something boring and practical, and I've been driving it for years now. No payment. And that $550 a month goes straight into investments. It's not sexy. Nobody's impressed by my car, but my net worth climbed by over $100,000 faster than it would have if I'd kept making payments. Kill the car payment before 40. Drive something paid off. Save the difference. Your retirement account will thank you. Subscription. Creep. The death by 1,000 cuts. This one is insidious because each individual subscription feels so small, so justified, so harmless. It's $10 here, $15 there, $8 for this, $12 for that. But when you actually add them all up, you're probably spending $150 to $300 a month on subscriptions, and half of them you barely use. Streaming services, music, apps, software, meal kits, subscription boxes, premium versions of things that have free versions, cloud storage, fitness apps, news subscriptions, on and on. Each one seemed worth it when you signed up, but collectively they're draining $2,000 to $3,500 a year that could be building wealth. And here's the psychology that makes this so destructive. You stop noticing them. They auto-renew. They're small enough that they don't trigger your "that's too expensive" alarm. You think, it's only $12 a month, that's basically nothing. Except nothing times 15 subscriptions is $180 a month, which is absolutely not nothing. I went through my bank statements a couple years ago and found I was paying for 17 different subscriptions. 17! And I was actively using maybe 6 of them. The others were just on autopilot, charging me month after month for things I'd forgotten I even had. So I killed all but the handful I genuinely use multiple times a week. Went from $240 a month in subscriptions to about $45. That's almost $200 a month that was literally doing nothing for me. Over a decade, that's over $30,000, including investment returns I would have missed. Before you hit 40, audit every single recurring charge. If you're not using it at least weekly, kill it. If there's a free version that does 90% of what you need, downgrade. Be ruthless. These small bleeds add up to massive wealth loss over time. Premium. Everything for no real reason. Here's a pattern I see constantly. Upgrading to the premium version of everything even when the standard version would work fine. Premium cable packages. First-class upgrades. Premium gas when your car doesn't require it. Organic everything when half your purchases don't actually benefit from being organic. It's lifestyle inflation in its purest form, and it's costing you way more than you realize because it's not just one thing. It's a mindset applied to dozens of purchase categories. You pay an extra $50 a month for premium cable channels, you watch maybe twice a year. You buy premium gas at 30 cents more per gallon because it feels like you're taking better care of your car, even though your owner's manual says regular is fine. You buy the premium version of household products when consumer reports show the regular version works identically. Each upgrade feels trivial, but when you're systematically choosing premium across 20 different categories, you're probably spending an extra $200 to $400 a month for marginal or non-existent and non-existent improvements. That's $2,400 to $4,800 annually. I caught myself doing this with groceries. I'd somehow convinced myself that I needed organic versions of everything, premium brands, the expensive cuts of meat. My grocery bill was $900 a month for 2 people. When I actually looked at what provided real value versus what was just premium signaling, I cut that to $550 without any meaningful decline in quality of life or health. Before 40, kill the automatic premium reflex. Buy premium where it genuinely matters. Maybe quality shoes, maybe a good mattress. But for most things, standard works fine, and the difference compounds into real wealth over time. The expensive gym. You don't use this one hurts because it represents optimism and aspiration, which makes it hard to admit defeat and cancel. You're paying $80, $100, maybe even $150 a month for a fancy gym membership that you use approximately twice a month, if that. When you signed up, you had every intention of going 5 times a week. The nice facilities, the classes, the sauna, it all seemed worth the premium price. But life happened, work got busy, motivation waned, and now you're basically paying $50 per visit for a gym that sits unused most of the month. And you keep paying because canceling feels like giving up on your fitness goals. It feels like admitting failure. So you maintain this expensive membership as a sort of aspirational tax, hoping that one day you'll suddenly become the person who uses it. But you won't. If you haven't established a consistent gym habit by now, the expensive membership isn't going to create it. In fact, expensive unused gym memberships probably represent one of the most common forms of financial self-delusion. The math is painful. $100 a month from age 35 to retirement is almost $50,000 in lost investment potential for a gym you don't use. I finally canceled my $120 per month fancy gym membership at 36 after calculating that over the previous year, I'd gone 18 times. That's almost $80 per visit. I could have hired a personal trainer for individual sessions for less than I was spending on unused membership fees. Kill the expensive gym before 40. If you actually work out regularly, great, keep it. But if you're going less than twice a week consistently, cancel it and either commit to a cheaper option or admit that gym workouts aren't your thing and find another way to stay active. Eating and drinking your wealth away. Let's talk about something that might be the single biggest budget leak for high-earning 30-somethings: the endless stream of restaurants, bars, takeout, and food delivery. You're busy, you're tired. Cooking feels like too much effort after a long workday. So you order in, or you meet friends for dinner, or you grab lunch out every workday because packing seems tedious. And it all feels reasonable in the moment, but you're probably spending $800 to $1,500 a month on food outside your home. That's potentially $18,000 a year, every year, for food that you'll forget about an hour after eating it. Over a decade, that's $180,000 in direct spending, or over $250,000 in wealth you didn't build because that money wasn't invested. And I'm not saying never eat out. I'm saying that what used to be an occasional treat has become your default, and that default is destroying your wealth building potential. The bar tab is even worse because alcohol is marked up insanely in restaurants and bars. You're paying $12 for a glass of wine that costs $8 for the entire bottle at the store. 3 drinks, and you've spent $40 on something you could have had at home for $6. I went through a phase where I was getting lunch out every workday and dinner out probably 4 times a week. My food spending was over $1,300 a month for one person. When I finally looked at it, I was horrified. I wasn't even enjoying most of these meals. They were just convenient defaults. I cut back to eating out once or twice a week, actually making it special again, and my food budget dropped to about $450 a month total. That's over $10,000 a year saved, which compounds to real money over time. Before 40, get your food spending under control. Cooking doesn't have to be elaborate. Meal prep on Sundays. Make eating out the exception, not the rule. Your waistline and your net worth will both improve. Renting instead of owning, or vice versa. This one is tricky because the answer isn't universal, but here's the principle. By your late 30s, you should be in whichever housing situation builds wealth for your specific circumstances, not the one that's just easy or comfortable. If you're in a high-cost city where buying makes no financial sense, and you're renting while investing heavily, great. But if you're renting out of inertia in a market where buying would build equity and you can afford it, you're bleeding wealth every month. Conversely, if you bought a house you can barely afford, and it's preventing you from investing anything for retirement, you're house poor, and that's its own trap. The specific advice depends on your market and situation, but the principle is housing should be part of your wealth-building strategy by your late 30s, not just a place you live. Either you're building equity through strategic homeownership, or you're renting affordably and investing the difference aggressively. What you can't afford to do anymore is rent expensively for convenience while not investing, or own expensively while being unable to save. That's the worst of both worlds, and it's surprisingly common. I rented until I was 34 in an expensive market, and it made sense because I was investing heavily. Then I moved to a more affordable area, bought a modest house, and my monthly housing cost actually went down while I started building equity. But I was strategic about it. I didn't stretch for the dream house. I bought what made financial sense. Before 40, optimize your housing for wealth building, not for lifestyle or ego. This is probably your biggest expense. Get it right. Brand name everything. You've reached a point in your career where you can afford nice things, and somehow that translated into buying brand name everything even when the generic works identically. Groceries are a huge one. Name brand cereal that costs $5 when the store brand that tastes identical costs $2.50. Name brand over-the-counter medications that are literally chemically identical to generics but cost 3 times as much. Cleaning products, paper goods, basic staples, all premium brands when generic would work fine. This extends beyond groceries. Designer clothes, when you could get similar quality for half the price. Brand name electronics with features you'll never use when mid-tier models do everything you need. Luxury brands as status symbols when you could signal success through your actual wealth instead. Look, I get it. Brands feel safer. They feel like markers of success. But they're also a wealth tax you're paying voluntarily. And if you're buying brand names reflexively across most product categories, you're probably overspending by $3,000 to $5,000 annually. That might not sound like enough to matter, but over 15 years with investment returns, that's over $100,000 in wealth you didn't build. I used to be a brand snob about all kinds of things until I actually did blind comparisons and realized I couldn't tell the difference in most cases. Now I buy generic for probably 70% of purchases and save the premium spending for things where quality genuinely matters. Before 40, kill the reflexive brand preference. Buy on value, not on logo. Your bank account will grow faster. The emergency fund in a regular savings account. This isn't exactly an expense, but it's costing you money. Keeping your entire emergency fund in a regular savings account, earning 0.1% interest when high-yield savings accounts are paying 4 to 5%. If you've got $20,000 sitting in a savings account earning basically nothing, you're losing $800 to $1,000 per year compared to a high-yield option. That's real money you're leaving on the table out of pure inertia. Same principle applies to keeping too much in checking accounts. Money that's just sitting there should at least be earning competitive interest rates. This is the easiest fix on this entire list. It takes maybe an hour to open a high-yield savings account and transfer funds. But people don't do it because their current bank is convenient. They don't want the hassle. They've been with that bank forever. And so they quietly lose thousands of dollars a year to banking inertia. I moved my emergency fund to a high-yield savings account 3 years ago. Takes exactly the same amount of effort to access if I need it, but it earns about $1,200 a year more in interest. That's free money I was just leaving on the table before. Kill the complacency about where your cash sits. This isn't about taking risk. It's about getting paid fairly for letting banks use your deposits. Funding other people's lifestyles. This one's emotionally complicated but financially clear. By your late 30s, you need to stop regularly funding other people's lifestyle choices, even when those people are family or close friends. I'm not talking about helping someone in genuine crisis or distress. I'm talking about the adult sibling who's always borrowing money they never pay back. The friend who never has cash when the bill comes. The extended family member who expects financial help because you're doing well. These small, regular financial outlays, $200 here, $500 there, picking up tabs, making loans that never get repaid, they add up to thousands of dollars a year flowing out of your wealth building and into someone else's consumption. And the hard truth is that enabling financial irresponsibility in others isn't actually helping them. It's subsidizing bad decisions while simultaneously sabotaging your own financial future. I had to have uncomfortable conversations in my mid-30s about this. A family member who expected regular financial help. Friends who assumed I'd cover things because I made more money. It felt terrible setting boundaries, but it was necessary. Your wealth building needs to be non-negotiable. If you want to help people, help them strategically, teach them, guide them, connect them to resources. But don't let guilt turn into a permanent financial drain. Paying for convenience you don't actually value. The final category is all the convenient services that seemed like great ideas but are actually just expensive time trades you could easily do yourself. House cleaning services when you could clean your own place in 2 hours a week. Lawn services when you could mow your own lawn. Laundry services. Food prep delivery. Task outsourcing apps. All-inclusive everything. Some convenience is worth paying for if it frees you up for things that genuinely matter or that earn you more than the service costs, but most people are paying for convenience that's saving them time they then spend on Netflix anyway. If you're paying $200 a month for various convenient services and you're not using that freed up time for something valuable, you're just spending money to be lazier. That's a luxury you can maybe afford at 50 when you've built substantial wealth. It's destructive at 37 when you should be building that wealth. I used to pay for all kinds of convenient services until I calculated the annual cost and realized it was over $3,000 for tasks that took maybe 4 hours a week total. 4 hours I was spending on entertainment anyway. So I cut them all and put that $3,000 toward investments instead. Before 40, audit what you're paying for convenience and ask honestly whether the time saved is being used for anything valuable. If not, do it yourself and invest the difference. The liberation of less. Look, here's what nobody tells you about cutting all these expenses. It's not about deprivation. It's about clarity. When you eliminate the financial noise, the recurring charges, the autopilot spending, the things you pay for without thinking, You create space to see what actually matters. And what you'll probably find is that most of these expenses weren't adding to your life anyway. The subscriptions you forgot about weren't making you happier. The premium versions of things weren't making your life better. The car payment wasn't providing satisfaction proportional to its cost. You were spending because you had the money and because that's what people do. But none of it was strategic. None of it was building toward anything. It was just consumption for its own sake, dressed up as normal adult spending. Killing these expenses before 40 isn't about sacrifice. It's about getting serious about building wealth while you still have time for it to come.